1839 Georgia, they tried to take her husband. She turned the night into their worst memories ***. They came for him. But she was more dangerous than they ever knew. The chamber trembled. The beams holding the creature flickered. And the wall showed another memory, one darker than the rest. A gathering. A council. Not ancient mystics, not supernatural guardians. Human leaders. Clergy. Officials. Explorers. Archivists. Cartographers. Gatekeepers of global narratives. She recognized their insignias. These were the founding architects of the colonial record, nations that had shaped world memory by erasing everyone else's. They stood around a pulsing map, identical to the parchment in Esperanza's hand. A man slammed his fist on the table. "We cannot let them remember what we did." Another answered. "Then we erase the witnesses." But there were too many. Too dispersed. Too interconnected. A woman stepped forward, calm, hardened. "We erase the very capacity to remember." And with that, they performed the pact that created the first forgetting. A binding of every suppressed testimony into a single containment entity, the chamber's prisoner, so the world could never recall what had been stolen. The archivist shook his head violently. This wasn't magic. This was statecraft. Esperanza clenched the map. "They didn't bury the truth," she said softly. "They centralized it." The creature lifted its face again. It no longer looked like many voices. It looked like one. The chamber lights flared. The final ring on Esperanza's map glowed. The seal beneath her feet cracked wider. It was time. The presence that had followed them since the archive's upper floors returned, surrounding them, steady, not cold now but warm. It wasn't a threat. It was a guide. Esperanza knelt and spread the map across the open seal. The parchment aligned perfectly with the chamber below. "Esperanza," the archivist whispered, stepping back, "if you open that last ring, there's no guarantee what comes out." "There's also no guarantee we survive another collapse," she replied. "Look around. The walls are remembering faster than the world outside is forgetting." Her fingers brushed the final incomplete circle. It didn't resist her touch. It invited it. She completed the ring. The map ignited, not with fire but with light so bright it erased the edges of the room. The beams holding the creature shattered like glass. The symbols on the chamber wall spun into a vortex. The creature rose, slow, weightless. But instead of rushing out, it paused at the threshold, staring at Esperanza with something like reverence. She felt its voice, not heard, felt. "You are the first to come without fear. You are the first to open the circle willingly. You are the first to remember us, even before knowing us." The archivist shielded his eyes. "What is it going to do?" Esperanza stood, trembling. "Not destroy," she said. "Restore." The creature spread its arms, blinding light spiraling from its form. Every erased memory. Every buried truth. Every silenced voice. Rising. Returning. Reclaiming. The world above them shuddered as timelines rewove themselves. And Esperanza whispered. "It's giving memory back to those who lost it." The light collapsed into silence. When Esperanza opened her eyes, she wasn't in the archive anymore. She stood in a street she recognized. But not as it had ever appeared in history books. Names on monuments had changed. Faces on murals were no longer the conquerors, but the communities that once disappeared. Maps in public kiosks showed territories that had been erased 2 centuries earlier. People walked with the confidence of those whose ancestors were never buried in footnotes. It wasn't chaos. It wasn't destruction. It was correction. Memory restored. The archivist stumbled beside her. "We didn't rewrite the world, we revealed it." Esperanza felt a presence behind her, the creature, no longer a prisoner but a luminous shadow, its form softer now, diffuse. She could feel gratitude emanating from it like heat. "You're free now," she whispered. The creature's voice formed one final time, not in sound, but in her blood. We were never meant to be forgotten. And now, neither are you. It dissolved into the air. Not vanishing. Dispersing into everyone. Everywhere. A living, global inheritance. Esperanza looked at the world reshaped around her. Not new. But true. A world remembering itself. A world no longer collapsing into lies. A world finally touching the center of its own forgotten history. She folded the now blank map. And walked forward. Because the remembering had just begun. They will tell you the forest keeps its own secrets. But that is a lie. The forest remembers everything. And on certain nights when the air holds its breath and the world feels thinner than it should, you can almost hear the memories whispering through the pines. Old things. Violent things. Things that were never meant to reach your ears. Tonight, one of those memories is waking up. It begins with the sound of a woman's footsteps, if you can call them footsteps at all. They barely disturb the pine needles beneath her feet. She moves more like a thought than a body, slicing through the pre-dawn darkness with the silence of something trained by a culture older than the country that hunts her. Her name is Iona. Cherokee. Daughter of a nation carved up, uprooted, and force-marched into history books written by the same men who destroyed it. She was supposed to vanish, just another ghost swallowed by the American wilderness. But fate made a mistake. It left her alive. Tonight, that mistake is coming for payment. She walks like her father taught her, breathe like shadow, move like wind. In her hand she carries a woven basket filled with herbs, bloodroot, ginger, sassafras, collected for the man she refuses to lose. The man the world says she has no right to love. Josiah. A runaway slave. A man carved from iron, scarred by iron, and hunted by men who believe pain is currency and human beings can be owned like livestock. Iona steps slow as the mist parts around her cabin, a hidden structure tucked so deep in the Georgia pines that even sunlight hesitates before trying to find it. Smoke curls from the chimney Josiah built stone by stone, a testament to the stubborn, impossible thing they are attempting, freedom. But the forest is uneasy tonight. It shifts. Listens. Warns. Iona pauses, not because she hears anything, but because every instinct honed through generations of survival begins to whisper the same truth. Something is coming. Something that reeks of law and violence, of horses and dogs, of men who have killed so often they no longer remember faces, only prices. And beneath the breath of the wind, the forest releases a single sound. A growl. Far away, but closing. Iona tightens her grip on the basket. She knows what hunts her. She just hasn't told Josiah yet. Iona steps inside the cabin, and for one fragile moment, the world pretends to be gentle. Josiah stands at the fire, flipping cornmeal cakes on a pan he forged himself. The scent of smoke and sweetness hangs in the air, the kind of comfort men like him are never allowed to keep. He looks up as she enters, and the fear in him softens into something warmer, something almost holy. His smile, rare, powerful, could convince a man drowning in his own darkness that sunlight still exists. But Iona sees something else behind that smile. A tremor. A shadow. A truth he hasn't spoken aloud. They eat quietly, both pretending it's just another morning. Josiah talks about traps he needs to check. Iona works a deer hide with her grandmother's ancient methods. But the silence is too sharp, like a blade pressed against the pulse of the day. Their piece is borrowed. Rented. Stolen. Then it happens. A sound so faint most ears would miss it. But not Iona's. Dogs. At first distant, like a rumor. Then louder, catching the scent of destiny. Beneath the barking, men's voices. Boots. Purpose. The kind of purpose that only exists when violence is guaranteed. Iona freezes mid-motion, hand still pressed to the deer hide. She does not turn her head. She does not breathe. She listens, really listens, the way only someone carved from generational survival can. Josiah bursts through the door moments later, breath torn from his chest. Iona, they're coming. 5 men. Maybe 6. Trackers. The kind that don't miss. His voice cracks, not from fear for himself, but fear for her. He grabs her shoulders. We run. Now. Before they surround us. But Iona has already crossed the room. Already reached into the corner. Already taken down the weapon that is not a tool, not a relic, but a blood oath made of iron and history. Her father's tomahawk. Hickory handle. Steel blade. Symbols carved for protection. Carried by warriors who refuse to vanish quietly. Josiah shakes his head, horror filling his eyes. No. No, Iona, you can't fight them. They'll kill you. Or worse. She turns to him slowly, the tomahawk resting in her hand like it remembers her. Running didn't save my people, she says. Begging didn't save yours. Outside, the dogs snarl. Closer. Hungrier. Iona takes one breath, deep, steady, final. We choose our ground, she whispers. And we make them bleed for every step. The vision didn't fade this time. It ripped. Lucian felt his consciousness dragged forward like someone turning the pages of a forbidden book too quickly. One moment he and Ilara were watching the village fall into frozen terror, the next, they stood inside a crude wooden hut lit by a single, trembling flame. The hunter, the man who returned with the obsidian stone, knelt on the floor, hands shaking violently. A bowl of water sat in front of him, but the reflection it held was not his face. It shimmered with something behind him, something tall and leaning, as if peering over his shoulder. Ilara whispered, he knew it followed him before he entered the village. Lucian nodded. He didn't bring it back. It chose him. The hunter's breathing hitched. He wiped the bowl away, smashing it. But the reflection, the creature, stayed. Its shape crawled across the wall like oil finding cracks in stone. The hunter spoke through clenched teeth. Ancestors, forgive me. He removed a small bundle from his satchel. Inside lay a seal, thin gold, carved with the same hexagonal pattern found in the chamber beneath the ruins. He pressed it against his chest, whispering a prayer meant for the dead. But the creature answered instead. A voice like dragging bones across marble. Your pain is a doorway. Open it. The hunter seized, spine arching unnaturally. His shadow stretched across the wall, warping into something grotesque. When his body fell forward, panting, the shadow remained, standing. Now separate. Now alive. Ilara grabbed Lucian's arm. Lucian, his shadow escaped his body. The hunter gasped out words. I didn't mean to betray them. I just wanted to keep it sealed. I didn't know it could use me. Outside, the frozen silence thickened. No wind. No movement. An entire village holding its breath. The shadow creature hissed. The seal is broken. The door is mine. The hut's flame extinguished. The vision tore apart, pitch black swallowing everything, until Lucian felt the chamber walls return around him. The real creature waited in the dark, towering over their kneeling bodies. Lucian staggered back, clutching his skull. The chamber's floor pulsed beneath them, slow, rhythmic, like the heartbeat of something buried far below. Ilara steadied him, though she was trembling just as violently. What does it want from us? She whispered. The creature drifted closer, its form warping the air. To witness. The word carried weight, enough to bend the dust on the floor. Darkness washed over the ruins again. Suddenly they stood inside the village square. But not during the panic, after. The moment after the seal broke. Every villager was frozen mid-action, a mother shielding her child, a man reaching for a tool, a child mid-step. All motionless. As if time had been gutted. Ilara walked past them, waving a hand near their faces. No reaction. They're alive, she said. But, stuck. Lucian approached the hunter, who stood in the center, eyes wide with guilt and terror. But even he was frozen now, body rigid, jaw locked. Only his eyes moved, darting inside the prison of his own mind. A sound rose. Soft. Wet. Dripping. Lucian turned. Across the square, shadows leaked from doorways, chimneys, cracks in the earth. They pooled. Merged. Thickened into a shape he recognized all too well. The creature. But smaller. Younger. Still forming. Ilara shuddered. It didn't kill them, it drained them. Their movement. Their time. Their breath. The village didn't stop breathing, Lucian whispered. It was consumed. The forming creature leaned forward, sensing its feast not yet complete. From the edge of the square came a single gasp. A child, young, trembling, had resisted the paralysis. A spark of motion remained. The shadow creature licked the ground with a tendril of darkness. Ilara's voice cracked. Lucian, don't watch. But he had to. The tendril snapped like a whip, striking the child's shadow. Not the child. The child collapsed unconscious. The forming creature absorbed the stolen shadow like a predator swallowing fresh meat. The paralysis snapped across the village like breaking glass. Every villager collapsed, drained of something unseen. Lucian felt his knees weaken. That's its nature, he whispered. It doesn't kill bodies. It eats the part that moves. That remembers. That breathes. The electric lights flickered, rattling inside their glass throats. The archivist froze mid-sentence. Esperanza slowly turned toward the far corner of the room. Someone was breathing there. Except no one had entered. No doors had opened. No footsteps had approached. Yet she felt the presence like a weight, an invisible figure leaning in, exhaling cold across the back of her neck. You hear it too, the archivist whispered. Not a person. Not a ghost. Something between. A voice arrived, not from the corner, but from the walls themselves. A low, vibrating murmur, as if the stones had memorized a language from before humans learned to speak. The voice didn't form words, it pressed them, like impressions on soft clay. A warning. A command. A demand. Esperanza closed her eyes. The sound wasn't random, it was structured. It was trying to communicate. It recognizes the map, she said. It knows we've opened something sealed. The archivist staggered back. But sealed by who? Esperanza swallowed hard. The ones who made the lie, she said. And the ones who survived it. The room temperature dropped further. Her breath fogged. The voice thickened, almost forming syllables now, almost human, almost memory. Then a single phrase pushed out of the cold. Not again. The map curled inward, as if reacting to the sound. As if alive. And Esperanza realized the presence wasn't trying to stop them from reading the map. It was trying to stop them from reaching the center. The stone bricks surrounding them began to sweat. Thin streams of moisture trickled down like the archive itself was terrified, like it was finally remembering something it had spent centuries fighting to forget. These walls were built in 1624, the archivist whispered. But the moisture, it's salt water. Salt water. Inland. 2 floors underground. Esperanza touched the wet stones and felt a tremor, not physical, but emotional. The building was recalling something. And the memory was violent. Images slammed into her mind like waves. A ship. A burning ledger. A woman screaming that the truth could not reach daylight. And a circle of robed figures carving a symbol into wet wood, the same symbol in the center of the map. The first collapse. The first forgetting. She stumbled back, gasping. The archivist grabbed her shoulders. What did you see? Not a ritual, she said through trembling lips. A decision. A pact. The walls grew louder, groaning, rumbling, almost speaking. And then the truth hit her. It wasn't natural, she whispered. The forgetting was engineered. The archivist blinked fast. Engineered by who? The people who feared what remembering would do to the world. Shadows pooled at the base of the walls. The salt water rose around their shoes. The presence in the room grew sharper, urgent, pushing them toward something. Not away. Toward the center circle. Toward the origin. The archivist whispered, "What happens if the last ring collapses?" Esperanza answered without thinking. "History won't repeat. It will erase everything." 1839 Georgia, they tried to take her husband. She turned the night into their worst memories ****. They came for him. But she was more dangerous than they ever knew. This time, the memory was not of the village, nor the cavern, nor any place tied to mortal land. Lucian and Elara stood in a void. Soft light glowed beneath their feet, forming a platform of fractal patterns that rearranged themselves with every breath. Voices murmured from distant directions, speaking in languages older than the first fire. Elara shivered. "Where are we?" The creature answered. "The interval. The place between what was taken and what was left behind." Figures emerged around them, translucent silhouettes, each flickering like fragile flame. They were the rememberers. The villagers. The hunter. The elder. Even the shells the creature had used. All standing in a circle. But they weren't alive. They weren't dead. They were data. Echoes. The residue of a civilization wiped so thoroughly that only this place, this interval, held its truth. Elara covered her mouth. This is everything they lost." The creature moved to the center of the circle. Lucian finally spoke, voice trembling. "Why show us this? Why now?" The creature lowered its towering form until its many limbs nearly circled them. "Because you are the first to find our seed. Since they destroyed themselves to hide it." Elara's heartbeat thudded loudly in her ears. "You mean, the village erased their own existence?" The creature's voice was nearly gentle. "They chose oblivion. Over becoming US." Lucian swallowed hard. "And the seed? The pillar? A doorway? A warning? A choice?" The void shook. The echoes flickered wildly. The creature's form grew darker, more intricate. Lucian felt the awful truth click into place. "You're showing us this," he whispered, "because the seed we found is waking." The creature leaned close. "No. It is already awake." The void shattered. Everything went black. Lucian hit the ground hard, back in the physical cavern, chest heaving, palms scraping stone. Elara dropped beside him, dizzy, her pupils trembling like she was trying to refocus on a world that no longer matched her memory. Because the cavern had changed. The pillar, what was left of it, was no longer dormant. Its cracked shell glowed with a slow, predatory rhythm. Shadows pulsed around it in waves, like breath. The seed inside was no longer whispering. It was listening. Elara whispered, "It knows we saw everything." Lucian didn't answer. He could feel it, deep in the air, the stone, the marrow of the cave. Something newly awakened was tracing their thoughts, curious, hungry. The creature, the towering one that had been showing them visions, stood still, watching them with a posture that felt almost expectant. Lucian gathered his courage. "You brought us here to show us what happened. But what is this place now?" The creature's head twisted toward the pillar. "The seed recognizes you." Elara stepped backward. "Why?" "We're just travelers. Researchers." The creature replied. "You carry the memory of a name. The same name your ancestors erased." The air turned cold. Lucian's heartbeat stopped. "A name," he whispered. The creature nodded. "The same name the village feared. The same name the seed first followed." Ilara stared at Lucian, terrified. It's following you. Lucian felt his vision narrow. His family, his mother, father, grandparents, they never spoke of ancestors. Records lost. History gone. But the creature continued, unhurried, certain. The one who brought the first seed. Left bloodline echoes. You are one. Lucian felt the world tilt beneath him. Ilara grabbed his shoulders. It's lying. It's manipulating you. But Lucian felt something burning under his skin. Faint. Old. Recognition. The pillar pulsed violently. The creature stepped closer. Now the seed has found its last anchor. The cavern trembled. The cabin becomes a held breath. A waiting grave. A battlefield disguised as a home. Iona moves to the center of the room, tomahawk hanging from her fingers, body still as river stone. She doesn't tremble. She doesn't blink. Men fear death because they've never met it face to face. Iona has fed it, bargained with it, buried it. The dogs slam against the door first. Wood splinters. Iron hinges scream. Then comes the voice, thick with arrogance, dripping with the absolute confidence of men who believe the world belongs to them. We know you're in there. Boots scrape. Spurs bite wood. Come out peaceful, girl, and nobody needs to get hurt. Iona almost smiles. A thin smile. A dangerous smile. She opens the door. 5 men on horseback form a crescent around her, rifles gleaming in the soft morning light. Their faces are carved from cruelty, weathered by greed, sharpened by the hunt. These aren't farmers or wanderers. These are human predators, slave catchers trained to break spirits and chain bodies. The leader dismounts. Cold eyes. Grey beard. A smile that has known the taste of suffering and learned to enjoy it. Well now, look at you, he drawls. Ain't you a pretty little savage? He steps closer, tapping the knife at his belt. You hiding a runaway in there? Big man. Strong. Answers to the name a property. Iona meets his eyes without blinking. I know no one by that description. And you stand on Cherokee land. You should leave. The men laugh, sharp, ugly, unearned. Cherokee land? That's cute. Ain't no Cherokee land anymore. Your people signed that away when they marched west. You're trespassing on Georgia property. And that means you belong to us. They spread out, surrounding her. One man unbuckles his belt. Another fingers the trigger of his pistol. Another whistles to the dogs, already salivating at the prospect of a kill. Iona lowers her gaze, not in fear, but in calculation. Her father once told her, a hunter becomes prey only when she forgets her teeth. She raises her eyes again. Slow. Controlled. Unbroken. Love, she says softly, is not a crime. The leader opens his mouth to sneer. And the world turns red. Iona moves with a speed that does not belong to the living. The tomahawk arcs upward, then down, then sideways in a blur of ancestral fury. The spike finds his throat, silencing him instantly. His eyes bulge. His hands claw at nothing. His blood paints the earth he claimed to own. The first man dies before he understands he has already met judgment. The leader collapses with a sound that is almost human, almost, but not enough to stir pity. Iona doesn't watch him fall. Death is a distraction. Survival is the goal. Josiah is the reason. The second man fumbles for his pistol, but fear ruins precision. His hands shake. His breath stutters. Iona is already moving, feet silent on pine-packed earth, body low like a wolf in mid-lunge. 3 steps. A pivot. The tomahawk sings through the air. The blade buries itself where the neck meets the shoulder, deep enough to silence bone, deeper still to crush hope. His gun fires wildly into the trees, startling birds into a frantic spiral of wings. He drops to his knees, choking on his own breath. Iona tears the weapon free, blood spraying like a warning to the remaining hunters. 3 left. All armed. All dangerous. All suddenly aware that the little Cherokee girl is the wrong kind of storm. They scatter, instincts warring with training. One circles to flank her. One raises his rifle. One pulls a long knife from a leather sheath. Iona studies them the way her grandmother taught her to read river currents. Who hesitates? Who commits? Who leads? Who hides fear behind noise? The man with the rifle thinks he owns the battlefield. He assumes distance equals power. Iona drops low as the gunshot thunders, splinters exploding from the doorframe. The men shout orders to each other, their certainty now flavored with panic. Iona doesn't retreat. She advances. She runs for the corner of the cabin, heart steady, footsteps soundless. The forest shifts around her, recognizing one of its own. She dives into the leaf-littered dirt just as another bullet whistles overhead. They're losing control. Good. Men who lose control always choose the wrong next move. She crawls toward the bleeding body of the second man, the one she put down moments ago. Her tomahawk lies beside him in a pool of red earth. She stretches for it. A boot slams down in front of her face. The flanker. Breathing hard. Terrified. Dangerous. He swings his rifle like a club. She rolls, fast enough that the butt smashes into the ground instead of her skull. In the same motion she grabs a fist-sized stone from the dirt. She rises like breath rising through smoke and cracks it against his temple with a sound that splits the forest silence. He staggers. She doesn't. Iona rips his own knife from his belt and drives it upward, precise and merciless. His breath leaves him in a wet gasp, collapsing him to the ground. 2 left now. But they are not hunters anymore. They are prey. The deeper they pushed into the ruins beneath the old estate, the more the air itself seemed to tighten around their throats, like the place resented their presence. Nothing down here had been touched for centuries. Dust lay in soft grey dunes along the stone floor, yet somehow there were footprints. Fresh ones. Footprints that didn't match theirs. Ilara stopped first. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Lucian nodded slowly. It wasn't a sound, more like a pressure. A hum beneath thought. A vibration inside the skull rather than the air. And it grew louder the further they walked, guiding them like some buried heartbeat. The corridor widened until they reached a chamber carved in perfect hexagonal geometry, walls covered in symbols too symmetrical to be human. Each sigil looked like a doorway that had been drawn but never opened. And in the center, rising from the floor like a black tooth, stood a pillar, polished obsidian, colder than the surrounding stone. Ilara's lantern flickered violently. "That pillar," she breathed, "it's not carved. It's grown." Lucian approached it despite every instinct screaming otherwise. Shadows seemed to cling to its surface even when illuminated, thick, oily darkness that refused to disperse. And then he saw it, beneath the gloss of the stone, shapes writhed. Not reflections. Not tricks of light. Shapes, humanoid, distorted, pressing against the inside like drowning bodies pushing against thin ice. Ilara stepped back. "Lucian, don't touch it." He didn't intend to. But something in the center of the pillar blinked. A single eye, the vertical, serpentine, opened from within the stone and fixed directly on him. And suddenly he wasn't in the chamber. He was somewhere else. Standing in the center of a village he'd never seen, but somehow recognized. The same village from that forbidden journal. The one wiped from every archive. Children ran through the streets unaware of the storm gathering overhead. Women carried water. Men repaired tools. Ordinary life, except for the figure standing at the village gate. His own face. Older. Weathered. Dead-eyed. And the double, his double, lifted an arm and pointed straight at Lucian as if warning him, "You came too far. Turn back or become me." A violent snap tore him out of the vision. The chamber returned. Ilara held him upright, shaking. What did you see? Lucian looked at the pillar. The eye was gone. But the footprints, those unfamiliar, recent footprints, now circled the chamber. The chamber fell into a predatory stillness, so complete, so absolute, that even the dust in the air seemed to stop drifting. Ilara tightened her grip on the lantern, but the flame shrank as if trying to hide. Lucian's pulse crashed in his ears. Those footprints, they were everywhere now. Led. Crossing. Looping. As if something had been walking in circles around them the entire time they were inside the vision. But there was no sound. Not a breath. Not a footstep. Not a shift of weight. Just the sense that something huge, patient, and horribly intelligent waited in the dark curve of the chamber. Ilara whispered, barely audible, "Lucian, don't look behind you." He froze. Her tone told him everything. He didn't turn, turning might feel like permission. Instead, he let his peripheral vision widen, stretching the edges of sight until they caught the faintest distortion. A ripple. A smear of something darker than dark. Height impossible to measure. Limbs too long. As if the shadows had learned how to stand. And then? A voice. Not spoken. Not heard. But pressed, violently, into their minds. You should not have returned. Ilara staggered as if shoved. Lucian felt the weight of an entire lineage in that single sentence, echoes of the village from his vision, the erased history, the double who pointed at him. The thing behind them wasn't merely a guardian, it was a remnant. A survivor. A witness to something so catastrophic the world itself had conspired to bury it. Ilara swallowed hard. We walk. Slowly. Don't run. Lucian nodded, though every instinct clawed at him to flee. They stepped away from the pillar, careful, deliberate. The footprints shifted as they moved, reshaping, as if adjusting to their new path. Mocking them. Herding them. The presence behind them glided, not walked. No friction. No weight. Just a silent drift that made the air colder and heavier. Halfway across the chamber, the lantern died. Not flickered. Died. Absolute darkness swallowed them. Ilara's breath hitched. Lucian? He reached out, found her hand, held it tight. The voice returned, clearer now. Closer. They buried the truth. They buried me. You opened the door. And then? A single, wet footstep landed in front of them, inches away. Not behind. Not circling. In front. Blocking the exit completely. Ilara's nails dug into his arm. Lucian, it moved. The darkness shifted, and something leaned in close enough that he felt its breathless cold on his skin. Darkness peeled away again, placing Lucian and Ilara at the edge of the forest beyond the village. Wind howled through the trees, real wind, not the eerie stillness of the cursed square. A figure sprinted through the underbrush. Small. Terrified. Breath ragged. A child. The same one whose shadow was taken. Ilara frowned. But he survived. Surviving isn't the same as escaping, Lucian murmured. The child stumbled into a clearing, collapsing beside a rotting log. Tear streaked his dirt-covered face as he pressed his hands over his ears. Stop, he whispered. Stop following me. But the voice followed anyway. You are mine. The forest dimmed unnaturally, colors draining into gray. Every bird fell silent. Every leaf stilled. The creature appeared at the tree line like a stain spreading across fabric. The child crawled backward. Take my shadow back. Please? Just give it back. But that was not how it worked. Ilara clenched her jaw. It marked him. Once his shadow was taken, he became the doorway. A living conduit. Lucian understood. That's why the hunter returned. He thought he could seal the threat outside the village. But the shadow chose someone else. The creature stretched a limb toward the child, slow, deliberate. Instead of striking, it placed a fingertip gently on the child's forehead. Darkness seeped into him. Not killing. Changing. The child's scream split the forest. Then cut off instantly. His eyes turned black. Completely. Liquid darkness swirling inside. The creature whispered, "Run. Carry me to the next door." And the child obeyed, sprinting into the world, carrying the curse forward through generations. The vision snapped. Lucian gasped as the chamber returned. Elara covered her mouth. The survivor became the carrier. His bloodline, it never ended. Lucian swallowed hard. Elara, what if the ruins we're standing in now were built to stop him? The creature leaned close enough that Lucian felt static crawl across his skin. Not him. His descendants. Lucian froze. Elara's lantern flickered back to life, dim, trembling. The chamber solidified around them again, cold stone, curved walls, the obsidian pillar looming like a silent judge. Elara leaned against Lucian, breathing hard, her pulse frantic. "Descendants," she whispered. "Lucian, what does it mean?" But he already feared the answer. The creature's presence thickened, filling the chamber like smoke made of memory. The door never closed. Images exploded through Lucian's mind, faces he didn't recognize but felt connected to. Generations of people scattered across time and geography, each carrying something dark in their shadows. A curse. A mark. A piece of the creature's essence buried in their blood. Elara grabbed his shoulders. "Lucian, look at me. What are you seeing?" He saw himself. His reflection in the pillar. Not the present him. But the double. The one he saw in the earlier vision. Older. Harder. Consumed. The creature spoke softly. "You carry the last strand. The final doorkeeper." Elara's eyes widened. No, that can't." Lucian didn't move. Couldn't. He felt it now. A pressure in his bones. A coldness in his breath. A whisper beneath his heartbeat. Elara stepped back in horror. "Lucian, your shadow." He turned. His shadow on the chamber floor didn't match him. It was taller. Thinner. Watching him. The creature circled them, its limbs unfurling like tendrils of night. "When your ancestor escaped, he carried a seed of me. Your line hid it. Fed it. Protected it. Until you." Lucian's voice cracked. "I didn't even know. You were meant to return." The pillar vibrated. The chamber shook. Dust rained from the ceiling like ancient ash. Elara stepped between Lucian and the creature. "No. If he's the last, if this ends with him, then tell us how to stop it." The creature paused. Then, by finishing what the village could not. Elara whispered, "Witches." The creature leaned close. "Kill the doorkeeper." Lucian's blood turned to ice. Elara's breath hitched. The chamber went still. The darkness didn't lift, it peeled. Like layers of night being stripped away one sheet at a time, revealing not light but a deeper, older shade of black beneath it. Lucian felt it before he saw anything, a cold pressure against his forehead, like a finger made of ice and intention. The creature, whatever ancient remnant haunted this chamber, was giving him no choice. It wanted to show him. A crack burst open behind his eyes, not painful but overwhelming, like a memory he never lived forcing itself into his mind. The stone floor vanished. The cold chamber evaporated. Elara's hand slipped away. And Lucian found himself standing in the heart of a village at twilight. The same village. The one erased from every map. Only this time, it was alive. Children chased each other around clay huts. Smoke drifted lazily from chimneys. Men hauled nets, women prepared evening meals. A small dog barked by a well. It should have been peaceful, but everything was tinted wrong, wrapped in a faint, unnatural pallor. The sun was setting, but the shadows stretched the wrong way, toward the light instead of away from it. Lucian tried to step forward, but his feet wouldn't move. He was anchored to the moment, made to observe. A figure approached the village gate. Tall. Wrapped in animal skins. Carrying something in both hands. The villagers saw him and froze. Whispers rippled through the crowd. He returned. Why now? Not after what happened. Children were pulled close. Doors shut. Even the dog whimpered and crawled backward beneath a cart. The man stopped in the center of the village square and lowered the object he carried. A stone. Black. Obsidian. The same material as the pillar. But this one wasn't polished, its surface pulsed, faintly alive, as if breathing. Lucian recognized the man. Not by face, but by the way the villagers looked at him, with fear layered over love. Hatred mixed with longing. The horror reserved for someone who had once been their protector and had become something else. Then the man spoke, and the entire village bowed their heads. I did not return to harm you, he said. But it followed me. The ground trembled. From the forest behind him, a shape emerged, tall, featureless, walking without sound. The same impossibly long limbs. The same drifting movement. The same devouring darkness. The villagers screamed. Lucian's vision shattered. And he was back in the chamber. On his knees. Gasping. Lucian tried to answer Ilara, but the chamber pressed in around him like a clenched fist. The creature wasn't done, not even close. Shadows trembled against the walls, stretching and vibrating as if some unseen pressure was building inside the stone itself. The air thickened, heavy enough to taste iron, dust, and something older than language. Ilara's voice cracked. Lucian, what was that place? He finally managed to speak. A village. Alive. Before the fall. Before everything was erased. Before he could explain further, the creature lowered itself, limbs bending in reverse angles, posture folding like a nightmare learning how to crouch. Then came the voice, this time not in their minds, but in the air. A low, resonant rasp that felt too massive for the room. You saw their fear. Now you will see their folly. Darkness surged forward and swallowed them both. Not a transition. A plunge. Lucian blinked and found the world around him changed again. He and Ilara stood on the outskirts of the village. The sky was bruised purple, clouds swirling in unnatural spirals overhead. Villagers gathered in the square, surrounding the obsidian stone the hunter had brought back. Mothers held their children close. Elders stood with hollow eyes, as if knowing the end had arrived long before it began. The hunter raised his arms. It must be contained. A woman stepped forward, her face streaked with soot, her eyes red with grief. You brought its shadow upon us. You did this. But the hunter didn't look at her. Instead, he pointed at the stone. It calls to the one who wants to devour what we protected for generations. Lucian felt Ilara grip his arm. Protected? What did they protect? Before he could answer, the ground beneath the villagers split with a sickening groan. Lines of glowing red tore through the soil like veins igniting. Panic erupted. People ran. Children screamed. The air hummed with a dreadful vibration. Lucian knew that sound now. It was the same sound as the pillar. The same resonance that shook his skull. The hunter shouted over the chaos. The seal is breaking. A pulse of black light shot upward from the obsidian stone. Villagers were thrown backward like rag dolls. The forest bent away from the blast. Birds dropped dead in midair. Then, a silence so deep it extinguished thought. Every villager froze. Every flame died. Every breath halted. Lucian's heart hammered as he watched an entire community, hundreds of lives, stand motionless, their eyes widening in shared terror. Because something gigantic was rising behind the village. Something without shape. Without bone. Without mercy. Ilara whispered, trembling. Lucian, the village didn't die. It was emptied. The creature's voice slithered behind them as the vision darkened. Lucian and Ilara reappeared inside a hut, or what once had been a hut. Walls made of woven reeds. Clay pots cracked. A dying fire pit. Everything smelled like old smoke and abandoned prayers. At the center, 12 villagers sat in a circle. Eyes shut. Breathing in perfect synchrony. Their hands were linked, but the skin between their fingertips flickered like flames, translucent, semiformed, fading in and out. Ilara whispered, "Spirit binders." Lucian shook his head. "No. Not spirits. Memories." The creature confirmed it. The last of the rememberers. In the circle, each villager murmured a name. Not prayers. Not pleas. Names. Hundreds of names. Thousands maybe. Spoken in a rhythm so haunting that tears blurred Lucian's vision. "They're reciting their dead," he said. Ilara corrected him, voice trembling. "No, they're reciting the ones who will die next." A woman in the circle opened her eyes briefly, eyes glowing the same black glass sheen as the creature. But she wasn't possessed. She was connected. She spoke. "The erasure begins. The hollowing reaches the innermost houses. We anchor what we can. We bind what survives." Lucian felt dread twist through him. This was no ritual of mourning. This was triage. The rememberers weren't saving people. They were saving information, identity, before the creature drained it all. A man in the circle shuddered violently. His hand flickered, vanishing up to the wrist before reappearing. Another name vanished from the chant. Ilara's voice broke. "They're losing people faster than they can speak them." The creature in the present loomed behind them, watching the vision unfold like one would watch a museum exhibit of their own past. They tried to outspeak us. They failed. The chanting grew frantic. Names tripped over one another. Breathless. Desperate. The hut shook as shadows seeped in through the walls like ink soaked into cloth. The rememberers screamed the final names, 3 at once, overlapping. Asher, Ren, Tal. Then the shadows struck. The chanting stopped. The circle collapsed. 12 bodies fell like puppets with cut strings. But something lingered, 12 faint wisps rising like discarded breath. Lucian realized the truth. The creature didn't just take memories. It devoured identity. The vision dissolved. Lucian and Ilara found themselves once more in the cavern, the ancient one, but now in its original state. No rubble. No collapse. The air shimmered with a metallic hum. At the center stood the obsidian pillar. Whole. Unbroken. Alive. Symbols crawled across its surface like insects made of shadow, shifting, reforming, vanishing before the mind could interpret them. Ilara stepped closer involuntarily, drawn as if her thoughts were being pulled into its orbit. "It looks different," she whispered. "Because it's awake," Lucian answered. A group of villagers, warriors, shamans, elders, circulated around the pillar. Their faces were carved with fear and awe. One elder pressed her palm against the stone. Her hand began to sink into it. Ilara gasped. "It's absorbing her." But the woman didn't pull away. Her face was serene. "It knows me," she said softly. "It remembers the pact." Lucian felt the creature behind them stir. The elder continued. "We were not supposed to open this chamber again. But the echo has multiplied. It hunts unborn generations. We must seal it deeper." A younger warrior protested. "It grows. Every night it grows. Every soul it takes, it becomes more real." The elder whispered, "Then we bury what should never breathe." She closed her eyes and pressed her other hand to the pillar. A shockwave swept through the cavern. The pillar cracked, thin fractures spreading like spider webs across its flawless surface. Something inside it screamed, a sound not heard with ears but with organs. Lucian staggered. Ilara clutched her head. The warrior shouted, "Stop! If you break the pillar, we sever its path," the elder hissed. "Or we release it," the warrior countered. Too late. The pillar splintered open. A geyser of black light erupted, throwing the villagers against the walls. The cavern shook violently as if the mountain itself tried to flee what was being unleashed. From inside the pillar, something crawled out. Not the creature. Not the echo. But a seed, pulsing with hatred and hunger. Ilara whispered, horrified. It wasn't a prison. It was an egg. The cavern collapsed. The vision died. The water on the floor didn't stay still. It moved, sliding like a living thing, toward a faint line in the concrete. A perfect circle etched into the floor, invisible until the moisture illuminated it. Esperanza knelt. "It's a seal," she said. "The same pattern from the map. Only this wasn't ink. Or burned parchment. This was carved into the foundation of the archive itself." The archivist backed away. But that would mean that this archive wasn't built over a site, Esperanza said, it was built to contain one. The presence hummed, low, urgent. Esperanza placed her hand on the seal. The concrete vibrated. And beneath it, she felt breathing. Slow. Heavy. Ancient. The archivist's voice cracked. "There's something alive down there." "Not alive," she corrected softly. "Awake." The map in her other hand twitched, like a pulse syncing with whatever was sealed below. The circles glowed faintly. The unfinished final ring remained open, waiting. Esperanza lifted her gaze. "The next collapse starts here," she whispered. "Unless we open the seal on our own terms." The presence in the room fell silent. The walls stopped groaning. The salt water receded. As if everything was holding its breath. Esperanza pressed her palm harder onto the seal. And the floor began to unlock. The floor split with a sigh that didn't belong to the earth. Not the groan of shifting concrete, not the crack of breaking foundations, this was the exhale of something that had been waiting. A slow, patient breath rising from beneath centuries of stone. Esperanza leaned over the opening. Warm air brushed her face. The archivist clutched his coat, trembling as the light flickered down the widening fault line. Below them was not darkness. It was memory, glowing, swirling, suspended like mist caught in amber. A chamber. Circular. Exact replica of the map's center ring. But carved into its walls were thousands of symbols, layered, overwritten, scraped out, recarved, splintered by time and fear. These were not decorations. They were eras, captured, sealed, and rewritten. "It's a vault," Esperanza whispered. "No," the archivist corrected, voice cracking. "It's a corral." Because at the center of the chamber, tethered by lines of pure light, was something neither of them could fully comprehend, a shape made of shifting silhouettes, flickering faces, dissolving memories, thousands of lives compressed into one trembling form. A consciousness built out of erased histories. Every forgotten testimony. Every silenced witness. Every truth scrubbed from human record. Here. Alive. Contained. Esperanza's hand shook. "This is the first forgetting." The face in the glowing mass twisted. Not in pain. In recognition. It saw her. It knew her. And through her lineage. It remembered everything it had once been forced to lose. The chamber pulsed. The creature leaned toward her, held back only by the strands of light. The archivist gasped, stepping away. "If the final ring collapses." Esperanza nodded. "It won't erase the world," she said. "It will release this." The form in the chamber reached upward, hands, or something like hands, stretching through the beams of light that bound it. Not attacking. Not begging. Reaching. It was trying to touch her, not out of hunger but recognition, like a lost child seeing a familiar face for the first time in centuries. Esperanza, the archivist whispered, it's responding to your memory. No, she said softly. It's responding to the memory my bloodline never got to keep. The echoes inside the chamber grew louder. She heard whispers layered over each other, voices from different centuries speaking as one. We lived. We knew. We were taken from ourselves. Do not let them fold us again. Esperanza felt a tear slide down her cheek. She wasn't crying from fear. She was crying from inheritance. The creature pulsed again, and suddenly the symbols on the chamber walls rearranged themselves, lines sliding like veins realigning. The archivist stumbled. It's rewriting the rings. No, Esperanza said. It's showing us what was removed. Images formed in mid-air. Families wiped from census records. Testimonies burned before courts convened. Maps redrawn to hide entire communities. Silences forced at gunpoint, at church altars, at treaty tables. Generational knowledge smothered beneath official narratives. This was not supernatural. This was systemic. Deliberate. Engineered by human hands. And then hidden by something far older. The creature's form dissolved into a single, unified glow. Esperanza whispered, you weren't the cause of the forgetting. You were the consequence. And the creature bowed. As if thanking her. The cavern lights flickered like living flames, shadows bending as the pillar's glow intensified. Ilara pulled Lucian behind a toppled slab of stone, forcing him to meet her eyes. Listen to me. I don't care what that thing showed us, it doesn't mean you're tied to it. Lucian swallowed hard. But what if? No, her voice sharpened. This is how it spreads. Through belief. Through fear. It's trying to make you finish something that wiped out an entire civilization. Lucian nodded, but his hands trembled. The creature loomed over them again. The pact was never finished. The seed can still be contained. If the bloodline accepts it. Ilara stood, fury erupting in her voice. Accept what? Let it harvest him like those villagers. The creature tilted its head slowly. Accept the role they feared. The role they chose to die to avoid. The role of the bearer. Lucian's skin ignited with cold fire. His breath caught. The pillar pulsed in answer. Ilara shook her head violently. No. No, 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 what does that even mean? The creature lowered itself, bringing its many eyes level with theirs. The bearer does not die. The bearer becomes the door. Lucian's stomach dropped. Ilara stepped in front of him. You're not touching him. But the creature was patient, ancient, certain. The seed needs a pathway to be sealed. It cannot be destroyed. Only transferred. Lucian felt the memories pressing into him again, faces, names, the hunter, the elder, the rememberers. He saw them all. He felt their terror. Their desperation. They refused the pact. And died. The creature leaned back, letting its words linger like poison. If you refuse it again, the world outside this cave will suffer what the village did. Lucian's mouth ran dry. He felt the weight of history, of blood, pressing on him. Ilara grabbed his hand with both of hers. We will find another way. We always do. The cavern rumbled. The pillar cracked further. The seed inside screamed silently. The cavern floor rippled like water. Rocks lifted, suspended midair. Dust swirled into spirals. The seed's energy was climbing toward a threshold, one the village had once died to prevent. Lucian felt his bones vibrating. Not trembling, vibrating. Resonating. Ilara squeezed his hand harder. Lucian, look at me. Focus. Stay here. But his vision kept fracturing, the past, present, the interval, all overlapping. The creature was no longer speaking aloud. Now its voice lived behind Lucian's eyes. The seed knows you. The doorway remembers you. Open it. And we sleep again. Ilara slammed her fist into the stone wall. Stop talking to him. The creature ignored her. Shadow spun faster. Lucian groaned. I can feel it, choosing me. Ilara stepped directly between Lucian and the creature. Her voice was low, feral. Then choose back. Choose anything except what it wants. The cavern ceiling cracked. A slow rain of dust drifted like ash. The creature's limbs extended. Choose quickly. The seed is hatching. Ilara grabbed Lucian's face in her hands. Look at me. Not at it. Not at the pillar. At me. But Lucian's heartbeat synced with the pillar's pulse. He whispered, broken. What if I'm the reason this started? What if my ancestor? Then you end it another way, she said, breath trembling. Not its way. The creature stepped closer. There is no other way. Ilara stood her ground. He is not finishing your cycle. He's breaking it. The creature's form sharpened, shadow screaming through its joints. Then the world will break with him. Lightning-like cracks exploded across the pillar. Black light burst upward, carving symbols into the ceiling. Lucian screamed. His veins burned. His vision exploded into white. And then everything stopped. Absolute stillness. Even the creature froze. The seed held its breath. Lucian was no longer in the cavern. He was somewhere deeper. Somewhere older. Somewhere meant only for bearers. The floor split without warning, a jagged black fissure racing across the chamber like lightning trapped under stone. The ground crumbled beneath their feet, and Lucian grabbed Ilara as they plunged downward in a rain of dust and shattered stone. They fell. For seconds. For minutes. For longer, no sense of time, only motion. Darkness swallowed them until they hit something soft but unsteady, a surface that shifted like wet sand. Lucian coughed, dragging Ilara upright. They were no longer in the chamber. They stood in a vast cavern lit by a faint, pulsing glow. The ground beneath them rippled as if breathing. The air was thick, humid, and filled with the scent of old earth and forgotten things. Ilara whispered, "Where are we?" Lucian scanned the darkness, heart pounding. Something enormous moved in the gloom. A wall? No, not a wall. A rib cage. A skeleton large enough to house a cathedral. Lucian's voice shook. This is beneath the ruins. Beneath everything. The oldest part. A deep hum vibrated through the cavern. The forgotten threshold. The creature descended behind them like a falling shadow, landing without sound. Where the first seal was built. Ilara stepped forward, eyes wide. This place, it's alive. The creature nodded. It grew around the shadow. It tried to contain it. But bones cannot hold darkness forever. The massive skeleton trembled, dust cascading off its ancient ribs. The air pulsed with an echo of suffering. Something died here long ago, something vast enough to cradle a curse. Lucian touched one of the ribs. It vibrated beneath his hand like a tuning fork. What creature was this? Not a creature. A guardian. The first who tried to keep the shadow from the world. Ilara shuddered. It failed. Yes. As all before you have failed. Lucian clenched his fists. Stop saying that. I haven't failed yet. The creature lowered its head. Then look. The cavern brightened. And Lucian saw. Hundreds of shadows. Pinned beneath bones. Whispering. Screaming. Begging for release. His own shadow among them. Ilara choked, stepping back. Lucian, that's you. That's your fate if you lose. The shadows all turned toward him. The chamber dissolved before Lucian's eyes, peeling open like a seam ripped down the fabric of reality. He and Ilara were hurled into another memory, not drifting this time, but dragged, as if the creature no longer needed to show them carefully curated fragments. Now it simply opened the wound. They stood on a ridge overlooking the village. Night. But not a normal night, not darkness from the sky, but darkness falling upward, as if shadows were rising instead of descending. Stars flickered violently, dimming one by one as though something massive was passing between them and the earth. Ilara gasped. The sky, it's bending. And it was. Constellations twisted like reflections warped in water. The moon elongated, stretched into an oval, then cracked into shimmering shards of silver that hovered without falling. The villagers didn't scream this time, they knelt, faces pressed to the dirt, as if the event was something they'd been warned about but hoped would never come. A horn blared. Low. Trembling. A sound too resonant for a simple instrument. The hunter, the one they had seen before, stood at the edge of the village, raising the obsidian stone overhead. Only now its surface was split open with glowing red fissures, leaking a mist that crawled along the ground like a living serpent. Lucian felt his breath catch. The mist was searching. "Why show us this?" he whispered. The creature's voice rippled behind him. Because this was the first night they tried to fight us. A crack tore through the sky, a vertical, like a door splitting open. From it came a monstrous silhouette, long-limbed, weightless, gliding through the fracture like smoke learning to crawl. Ilara clutched Lucian's arm. That's it. The original form. The villagers screamed prayers. Children hid. The hunter shouted a command, and the mist lunged upward like a tidal wave, trying to trap the descending shape. For a heartbeat, Lucian saw something impossible. The creature hesitated. As if startled. As if wounded. But then it unfurled its arms. Taller. Wider. Endless. The mist shattered. The villagers were thrown backward as the sky beast descended, stretching a shadow across the land so total that even memory could not escape it. The vision snapped. He stood in a narrow chamber carved from smooth stone, impossibly ancient, impossibly intact. No torches. No light source. But the walls glowed faintly with a soft silver-blue sheen, like moonlight trapped underground. Ilara was gone. The creature was gone. Only Lucian remained. He stepped forward, breath echoing in a room too quiet to be natural. The air tasted metallic, like blood and cold iron. Symbols glowed faintly along the walls. Not the shifting, crawling runes of the seed. These were stable. Human. Hand-carved. A message. Lucian ran his fingers over the etchings. They were written in a language he shouldn't have known. But somehow understood. If you are reading this, you are the final blood. His heart stopped. More lines followed. We failed to destroy the seed. We failed to contain it. We failed to bear it. Lucian felt his legs weaken. The next line chilled him. We chose oblivion over acceptance. If you stand here, then our choice was not enough. A wave of cold swept through him. He understood what this chamber was. A confession. A warning. A tomb of truth left for the one descendant who survived time's erasure. The last lines carved into the wall were the worst. The seed will call you. Do not answer. If you answer, you will not be you. Lucian staggered back. A soft voice drifted behind him. Ilara's voice. Lucian? He turned. Ilara stood in the doorway of the impossible chamber. But her eyes? Her eyes were wrong. Black glass. Reflective. Empty. The seed had already touched her. She smiled, gently. Not Ilara's smile. It doesn't have to be painful. Lucian's blood went cold. The room vibrated. The symbols dimmed. The parchment was thinner than skin, brittle as if it had been dried over a fire meant to cleanse a sin. When Esperanza lifted it, the dust fell from its folds like the remains of something once alive. No one in the room breathed. Because this wasn't a map of places. It was a map of eras. Across the fragile surface, instead of borders, were concentric circles, each labeled in a language older than the colonial scripts the Greyfield archivists knew. The circles pulsed outward like rings left in water after something enormous slipped beneath the surface. At the very center of the ring sat a single sentence burned into the parchment rather than written. A sentence that looked as though someone pressed a heated blade through the fibers. Where the first forgetting began, the last remembering will end. Esperanza pressed the map flat, and the iron-burned lines warmed her fingertips. "This isn't a timeline," she whispered. "It's a containment field." The archivist, pale and trembling, leaned closer. "The circles, they are collapses. Disappearances of whole communities, vanished records, erased testimonies, sanctioned silences. The rings weren't showing expansion, but compression. History folding inward. Realities sealed. Truth made smaller each century. At the edge of the map, just barely inked, was a final ring, unfinished, like the pen was pulled away mid-stroke. Next to it was a short note in Portuguese. "Do not allow the next contraction, or everything collapses into the first lie." Esperanza's breath shuddered. Because she knew exactly what that first lie was. And she knew someone, or something, was trying to recreate it.